Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So today we are going to be speaking about immigration. Migrating to non-Muslim countries. Is it permissible for Muslims or not permissible? So basically today's session will concentrate about migration. This is one of the thorny issues for many Muslims. Many Muslims in the Middle East consider migrating to the West, either for political reasons, for political persecution, or for economic reasons, because of the economic hardships. Now, the West obviously offers a better life as far as having more freedom if you seek political asylum, and also offers better economic opportunities for Muslims mainly coming from the Middle East. Now the question is, as a Muslim, as a practicing Muslim, am I allowed to migrate to the West, to the United States, to Canada, to Europe? To some people, it might not be a question. It might not be even a question for them. They just migrate without asking. For desperate refugees now in Turkey, the Syrian refugees in Turkey, in Jordan, in Lebanon, any person, any government, Western government dangles to them the possibility of migrating, they will seize upon it. They are not going to ask any sheikh or sayyid whether we're allowed or not. Out of desperation. But in the end, this is an Islamic issue. If I'm concerned about my religion, I need to ask that question. Am I allowed or not? Now, what's the issue? Why it is even an issue? We have something that scholars call it التعرب بعد الهجرة. التعرب بعد الهجرة. I'm going to write the transliteration. تعرب بعد الهجرة. What is تعرب بعد الهجرة? Please listen to this carefully. There are major sins and minor sins in Islam. So, for example, one of the major sins in Islam is what? Any feedback?
A crime.
Huh? Killing, murdering someone. What else? Zina is one of them.
Gossiping.
Theft.
Huh?
Gossiping?
Gossiping? It could be, yes.
Theft.
Theft is one of them. Ascribing partner, shirk billah. So there are seven cardinal sins in Islam. One of them, al-firar min al-zahf. If you are facing the enemy in the battlefield, you turn your face and you run away. That's a sin. One of the sins that is considered the cardinal in Islam is التعرب بعد الهجرة. So what is تعرب بعد الهجرة? التعرب بعد الهجرة means that I go somewhere, I travel somewhere where I no longer can practice my religion freely, in a way that's going to affect my faith and basically on the long term will weaken my faith. Example, just an example. Imagine Russia during the Soviet Union. If I traveled to Russia, if I had traveled to Russia during the Soviet Union, I was not able as a woman to keep my hijab on. As a man, I was not allowed to pray. As a student, I'm not allowed to learn my religion. So do I have the luxury of moving to Russia under the Soviet Union voluntarily? Just I choose to go there because I wanted to live there. Am I allowed to do that? According to the scholars, you're not allowed to do that, because by moving to such environment, to such society, you will be weakening your faith, You will be weakening the faith of your children. You will be weakening the faith of your spouse. Therefore, you're not supposed to travel or reside somewhere where you're going to have a weakened faith, weakened religion. This is called ta'arrub ba'd al-hijra. Now, where did this originate from? It originated from Muslims living in Mecca during the time when the Prophet was in Mecca, after the hijrah of the Prophet. So after 13 years, the Prophet migrated from Mecca to Medina due to the persecution of Meccans to Muslims. Now when the Prophet left, the verses in the Quran came telling all Muslims, all remaining Muslims in Mecca, that you all have to leave. Because by choosing to stay in Mecca, you will not be able to practice your religion freely. They will not be able to pray. They were not able to fast. They were not able to do anything of their obligations. Meccans would not allow them. In fact, converting to Islam was a crime, punishable by Meccans' law. And that's why many Muslims lost their lives, because they just converted to Islam. Like Sumayya and Yasir, the parent of Ammar, the companion of the Prophet. So basically, the Quran came down to tell remaining Muslims that you all have to leave. You have no excuse. You need to leave Mecca and go to Medina, because you have no excuse staying in Mecca. Some of them would say, you know what, we have our livelihood, we have our store, we have our, let's say, business here, we can't leave. Islam tells them there is no excuse. You have to leave your business, you have to leave your livelihood. Nothing more important than your faith. You have to preserve your faith. Leave your business, leave your home, go to Medina. And you're not allowed to stay in Mecca. Therefore, most Muslims heeded the call of the Quran and they chose to migrate. In fact, when the verse came down warning the Muslims remaining in Mecca not to stay in Mecca anymore, one of them, his name is Jundub ibn Dhumra. Jundub ibn Dhumra. His name is Jundub ibn Dhumra. He said, I'm going to leave tonight. His family told him, you're sick. He says, even if I'm sick, I'm going to leave. I'm not going to stay. After this ayah, Allah warned us not to stay in Mecca. I'm not going to stay. So he decided to leave that particular night. As he was leaving, he was sick. He had some fever. As he was leaving, he got to the outskirts of Mecca in an area called At-Tan'im, which is maybe 10-15 miles off Mecca. He got sick and sicker to the point that he wasn't able to move anymore. So he realized he's going to die. Before reaching to Medina, he laid down on the floor and he extended one hand as his hand, and he put the other hand, pretending it is the hand of the Prophet, on the other hand, and doing bay'ah for the Prophet, making pledge with his own hand on behalf of the Prophet that I am with you and I have not been able to reach you, and I am doing this bay'ah before I die on behalf of the Prophet, that I'm pledging to the Prophet, I am following him. And he died. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed an ayah in the Quran, وَمَنْ يَخْرُجْ مِنْ بَيْتِهِ مُهَاجِرًا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ ثُمَّ يُدْرِكْهُ الْمَوْتِ فَقَدْ وَقَعَ أَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. And he whoever travels or migrates from home, going to Allah and his apostle, and yet he faces death, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will embrace him. So basically, that was how this issue came about, that Islam told Muslims you're not allowed to stay in a hostile environment, hostile to the point that you cannot exercise your religion. Now you know the general rule now. Muslims are not allowed to stay or reside in a society so hostile to Islam that Muslims are not capable of practicing their religion accurately and freely. The question is, does this apply to the West? Does this apply to the United States of America? Does this apply to Canada? Does it apply to Australia or not? This is the matter we're going to discuss. So today, we're talking about migrating to the West based on the clause التعرب بعد الهجرة, which is one of the major sins in Islam. Does this concept, the concept of migrating to the West, does it apply? Does it apply to this concept? Is it تعرب بعد الهجرة? Are we going back to تعرب, meaning abandoning our faith by migrating? Well, the scholars will not tell you yes or not. The scholars will tell you the ruling. The scholar's job is to give you the ruling. He tells you if you, by you migrating to the West, your faith will be influenced. Your kids' faith will be influenced. You no longer, whether on the short term or the long term, can practice your religion accurately and freely, then you can't. But if the answer is you can, then it is okay. So basically, the scholar doesn't tell you migrating to this specific country is halal or haram. He doesn't go into details. What the scholar does, he gives you the general ruling. Let me give you an example. Is taking Tylenol halal or haram? The scholar will not answer this question. The scholar will give you the general ruling that if there is pork product included in your medicine, alcohol, a big percentage, substantial percentage of alcohol, you're not supposed to take that medicine. I go and read the ingredient. If the ingredient on Tylenol tells me that yes, there is pork product in it, there is substantial percentage of alcohol in it, I'm not supposed to take it. If not, then it's okay. So usually the mujtahid, the scholar we follow, they don't go in details. They are not responsible for the details to tell you the specifics. Rather, they are responsible to give you what? The general ruling, and you apply it. You apply it on yourself. You use your intelligence, you use your mind, use your brain, and you say, you know what? With this general ruling that my marja gave, I apply it to this specific country. For example, practical example, France. France today does not allow women to wear hijab in the public school. So if I have a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old daughter going to high school, she's not allowed to wear hijab. Assuming I'm unable to pay for her private school. I am a worker who's in the lower middle class. I hardly can, put food on my family's table. I cannot pay $5,000, $6,000 tuition for my daughter. The only option for her to seek her education is to go to public school. Yet the public school in France does not allow her to wear hijab. What do I do in this case? I'm not supposed to go. I'm not supposed to go. My religion is more important than my convenience. People try to seek convenient life, escape hardship, but in the end, our religion is more important. Islam is not for imposing hardship on anybody, but at the same time, Islam says, make sure you do not dilute your religion, your faith, simply because you're seeking more comfortable life in the West. So, this is the whole idea. Let's go and apply the lesson. So, please turn to page 31. Those who have the book, turn to page 31. And those who don't, please share with your classmate. Please, inshallah, next week we will have enough copies, because up till yesterday the number of students registered in this class was only 8. So today we had more students registering, therefore we didn't have more copies of this book, but inshallah for next week we will have more copies. So go to number page 30. Page 30, number 2. A believer is allowed to travel to non-Muslim countries provided that he is sure or has confidence that the journey would not have a negative impact on his faith and the faith of those who are related to him. So if you are confident that by traveling to the West, this does not, pose any threat to your faith, your religion, or the religion of your children will not be diluted, then you're allowed. That means if I'm not sure, I am someone who doesn't have that strong immunity, I go there, maybe my faith will be diluted. I may remove the hijab from my head. I may, God forbid, go and eat pork, non-halal meat. So all those sins, if I am exposed to them to a great extent, then I need to think twice before making that decision. Number 3, similarly, a believer is allowed to reside in a non-Muslim countries provided that his residing there does not become a hurdle in the fulfilling of his religious obligations toward himself and his family presently as well as in the future. See, we mentioned something about short term and long term. Sometime I'm coming to this country for medical reasons. I'm here for treatment, 1 month, 2 months, and then I go back. It's not a big deal. I'm not putting my kids in the schools. I'm not staying here. I'm not indulging in this society. But sometimes, no, I'm here to live forever, permanently. I'm here to reside in this country. My kids will go to the school. I'm going to go to the supermarket. I'm going to be part of the society. So the narratives are different between someone staying here on a short stay and someone who's staying here on the long term. So the Sayyid says, by the way, this is Sayyid Sistani speaking here, he says, it doesn't matter whether on the short term or long term, it should not affect your religion. So if it affects your religion on the long term, not in the short term, I'm not allowed to stay on the short term, on the long term. If it will affect my religion on the long term and short term, I'm not supposed to stay on the short term and the long term. So number 3, he says it is haram to travel to non-Muslim countries in the east or the west. It doesn't matter in the east or the west. But why are we speaking about the west mostly? Because mostly those hurdles are found where? In the west. So in the west, in the east or the west, if that journey causes loss of faith of a Muslim, no matter whether the purpose of that journey is tourism, business, education, or residence of a temporary or permanent nature. It doesn't matter what the purpose of the trip, as long as it poses a threat to my Islamic identity, I'm not supposed to take that trip. Okay. What about if I am, say, I'm not fully independent, I am dependent. The example is a wife. You know, in our Islamic heritage and culture, a wife follows the husband. Now, what if the husband decided to go to a country where the family cannot practice their faith? What about the wife? In this case, does she have to follow her husband? We know a wife has to follow her husband. What about this particular case, where her husband is choosing to go to a country where he and she both cannot practice Islam freely and accurately? What about this case? Say it says, if the wife strongly feels or is sure that her traveling with the husband to a non-Muslim country will result in loss of faith, it is haram for her to travel with him. Same thing for the children, for the dependent children. I'm 16-year-old girl. I'm 16-year-old boy. My father is about to travel to a country where he cannot and we cannot practice our religion freely and accurately. I'm not supposed to go with my father, even though I'm supposed to listen to my father, but not in this case, not in this particular case. Okay. So number 7, when we say loss of faith, what do we mean by loss of faith? See, when we say loss of color means that my jubba loses color, and instead of staying navy blue, it becomes gray. It becomes light blue. When it comes to physical concept, it's very easy to comprehend that. Loss of color. If I say this board lost its colors, faded. It was bright white, now it is dark. But when we talk about loss of faith, what do we mean by that? The Sayyid says, what do the jurists mean when they speak of loss of faith? It means either, listen to this, either, one of those. This is what we mean by loss of faith. Either committing forbidding act by indulging in minor or major sins. Like what? Like drinking intoxicant. If I travel to this country, I know either 100% or 80% I'm going to put in a situation where I have to drink. I'm not supposed to go there. Or I know I'm going to put in a situation where I have to commit a sin. For example, my kids are taught compulsory suggestive music in their school. Or swimming, mixed swimming, boys and girls together. I know for a fact, if I go to this country, my daughter and my son will be forced to swim with the opposite gender. Or they have to take dancing class. I know for sure. I'm giving an example, okay? I'm just giving an example. Okay, am I allowed to go to this country? Now, if I have a way not to do it, like we do here, then we don't have to. So, to answer your question, Sayyid, give us the bottom line. Is it traveling to the United States is haram or no? Sayyid Sistani will not answer. But we need someone to answer this question. My input, my answer is this. Depend. It is just like someone says, is driving in the car while the car is speeding, over speeding, safe or not? Depends. If you have your car seat fastened, if the tires are good, if the maintenance of the car is good, if the driver is not sleepy, if the road is not slippery, there are 100 ifs. If, then yes, it's safe. But if one of those conditions are not met, no, it's not safe. Same thing. In this country, there are many hurdles. If I just go without taking extra precaution, yes, most likely either myself or one of my children or my spouse will indulge in sinning. But if I open my eyes and I am extra careful and I put my kids into Islamic school and I keep my house and the environment in my house clean and I keep my kids away from bad peers and from the influence of bad actors, and if I make sure that when my kids go to school they don't indulge in something haram, and if they are asked for attending a swimming class with the opposite sex, I can go to the Islamic Center and get a letter from them and they could be exempted. And when my wife is going to take a picture for the passport, I can get another letter from an Islamic Center and she can wear hijab and she could be exempted. If, all those ifs, yes, it's okay. It's not haram to live in this country, and therefore migrating to the United States is not a major sin. It's not ta'arrub ba'd al-hijra. But if I don't care and I just go and put my kids in public schools and I do what other people do and I don't watch over their dietary system and I don't watch over my own dietary system and I live in a city where there is no halal meat and when there is no Islamic center and there is no halal supermarket and there is no Muslim community. I'm the only Muslim along with 2 other Muslims in that city and I am exposed to so many sins, and where I have to sit with my colleagues at work while they are drinking, I have to sit on the same table. No, I'm going to commit sin, obviously, and it is going to be haram. So it depends. It's all about what? Can someone say what I was going to say? It's all about management, how I manage my life in the United States. If I manage it loosely, I'm most likely I will end up in committing haram, or my family will commit haram, or my children will commit haram. But if I manage it well, and I make sure that I'm doing my Islamic obligations accordingly, and I'm not going to put my family in a place where their faith is compromised. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where my religion is compromised. I can do that.
So the ta'arrub is managing?
No, the word ta'arrub means to abandon.
Okay.
To abandon faith after hijrah, after guidance. In other words, abandoning faith after being guided. That's what it means. So management is the key issue. In my opinion, management is a key issue. How do we manage our life? Do we manage it loosely, not caring at all about my religion and about my Islamic obligations? Of course, most likely I'm going to indulge in either minor sins or even major sins. But if I manage my life in a way that I stay close with other Muslims, I make sure that my kids are kept away from the bad influence of sexual promiscuity, drugs, bad peers, the bad habits, making sure I take them to an Islamic center where they listen to a religious speaker, when they are involved in Islamic activities, where they go to an Islamic private school. If I cannot provide and afford a private Islamic school, at least I take them to a Saturday school or Sunday school. Yet with their public school, I keep an eye open on them, on their movement, what do they do, when do they come back, who they go out with. There are 100 ifs. 100 ifs. If I do them all, yes, I can make sure that my residency in the West is halal. Otherwise, it is problematic. It is problematic. I have seen myself, some Muslims who assimilated in this country. Their name changed, their culture changed, above all, their religion. They abandoned Islam as their religion. I remember one time I was invited to a city in Indiana, the state of Indiana. And there is a lady who passed away. And obviously there was nobody willing to pray on her. So to do the janazah prayer, I was called upon and I had to go travel and do the prayer, the janazah. So I went with 2 friends, 3-hour drive. So when we got there, it was a masjid. Supposedly it's a masjid, but when we entered the masjid, I see men and women are mixed. Women are wearing conspicuous makeup with perfume, and each woman is talking to a man. just like a party or wedding session. Women are dressed nicely with makeup, men are dressed. And I was really shocked. I turned to my friend, I said, are you sure you took me to the right place? Are you sure you didn't take me to a party or something? He says, no, look, this is the masjid and the name of the masjid. So I was really annoyed by this. I sat waiting for everybody to congregate, and then we start the funeral service. A man, maybe in his mid-50s, stood up and he says, this is exactly what he said. He said, without Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, without anything. He just started off like this. Today, I have mixed feelings. Though I'm a good speaker, but today I'm speechless. I have mixed feelings. Feeling of sadness and feeling of jubilation. Sadness, you know why? Because my mother is laying down here. And jubilation and celebration because today is my wife's birthday. So I'm not sure, should I be saddened for my mother's death, or I should be jubilant for my wife's birthday. People are laughing. I'm looking at this man. Is this man for real? But he wasn't joking. He wasn't joking. He was, serious about it. And then he went on talking about jokes. Jokes his mother made when she was alive. And people were cracking of laughter. He turned the place into a comic session. People were laughing out loud for at least 20 minutes. I'm listening. And then it was my turn to go and speak. And I said, guys, this is not time to laugh. This is a time to reflect. Look what's waiting. You, look at this janazah. You will be here. I don't know when, but you will be eventually here. You will be put in this same casket. And people will come and see you being displayed. Is this something laughable? Anything laughable about this scene? This scene should deeply move you and make you think about your own. What would happen to me when I am here? So I gave it to them. And then it was time for Salah. Believe it or not, only me and the two friends who traveled with me, we stood for the prayer. And the rest of them stood on the sidelines watching us like aliens came from space, watching us. Then after that, we went to the cemetery before going to the cemetery. When we were at the cemetery. When we were in the cemetery, I realized the grave was not an Islamic grave. They didn't take her to the Islamic section. They took her to the non-Islamic section, where the grave is not directed to the Qibla. So I go to her son, the same guy, the philosopher. And I tell him, are you going to bury your mother here? He says, yes. I said, but it is haram to bury her here. You cannot bury her. He says, why? I said, because this is not an Islamic grave. It is not according to the Qibla. It's not directed to the Qibla. And he looked at me and he says, whatever it is, this is our decision. We already made a decision. So I look at his brother and I'm trying to appeal to the brother, hoping that he will change and he would answer me the same question. Imam, this is a decision the family already made. We want to bury our mother here. And then I would not relent. I was very persistent. I said, you cannot do this. He says, because our father is buried here. I said, okay, even if your father is buried here, you cannot do this. Haram. Then all of a sudden they had a sister. And the sister jumped on me and she says, Imam, you think God cares if our mother buried this way or this way? Come on. I said, okay. And I withdrew. And I'm heading to my car. And she says, Imam, where are you going? I said, I'm going home. Why are you going home? You're not doing service? The service? I said, which service? She says, you're supposed to walk before the casket like the Catholic father does. I said, no, I'm not supposed to walk before the casket. You know, the father walks before the casket. So to her, it's a matter of, you know, culture. So she says, why? I said, well, God doesn't care if I walk before the casket or not. And then I turned to the car and I left. So my point is that this is the product of not being, you know, incorporated to your religion. When you're not, this is what happens eventually. When there is no Islamic education, no Islamic practice, no Islamic awareness, you say, God doesn't care if I bury my mother in this grave or the other grave. God doesn't care if I eat pork or lamb. God doesn't care if I eat, you know, halal or non-halal. God doesn't care. If that's the logic, then God doesn't care. If God doesn't care, then who cares? Nobody cares. That's the concept. They care about their own materialistic comfort, but when it comes to their religious well-being, God doesn't care, according to them. So the Sayyid says, it means, loss of faith means either committing forbidden act by indulging in minor or major sins like drinking intoxicant, adultery, eating forbidden meat, or drinking najis, impure drinks, etc. It also means abandoning the fulfillment of a compulsory act like neglecting salah. If I neglect salah, if I no longer care about my salah, whether I pray it on time or after time, ada or qada, in time or make it up 2 days later, this is considered loss of faith. So fasting, hijab, or other obligations. In other words, if I express any compromise over my religion, whether it's a minor issue or a big issue, then this is considered loss of faith. If I compromise over my salah, my hijab, my fasting, God doesn't care if I fast or doesn't fast, or I don't fast. God doesn't care if I go to Hajj or I don't go to Hajj. This is considered loss of faith. Okay. Sayyid says, if circumstances for a Muslim, number 8, if circumstances force a Muslim to migrate to a non-Muslim country with the knowledge that the migration will cause loss of faith, a person seeks political asylum in a non-Muslim country in order to save his life, it is permissible for him to make that journey to the extent that it saves his life and not more than that. Okay. Now we have the law of necessity. What is the law of necessity? Let me explain the law of necessity. I'm traveling and in my car, and my car broke in the heart of the desert. I'm trying to fix it. I can't. A few hours pass by and I run out of water and I have no water to drink. And I'm almost dying. I'm almost dying out of thirst. A man passes by and then I ask him for water and he tells me, you know what? Unfortunately, I have no water. I just have a bottle of beer or whiskey. What I'm supposed to do here? Can I drink it or not?
To save your life.
You can.
Now we have two issues. We have drinking, which is haram, but also we have preserving human life, which is mandatory. Those two concepts are colliding with each other. One, to stay away from wine, alcohol. The other one, the other obligation I have is to preserve my life. Which one is more important in the eyes of God? Saving someone's life. Why? Because I can make up for this one, but I cannot make up for the other one. How? If I drink this out of force, out of having no choice, I can make up for it. How?
Fasting.
Huh?
Fasting.
No, by asking for forgiveness. But if I let myself die, can I make up for it? How am I going to make up for it? There's no way. Another example. I'm about to pray. I'm about to say Allahu Akbar, and I see a child falling in the swimming pool. What I'm supposed to do here? I'm supposed to stop my prayer immediately and go and save the child. Why? Because praying can be made up. I can make it up. Half an hour later, I come and make it up. But if I let the child die, can I make it up? Can I give him another life? He's dead. So when there is no room to make up, then that obligation will proceed over the other obligation. This is the law of necessity. If I do not drink because drinking alcohol is haram, and I'm trying to preserve that law, I'm going to compromise my life. I will die. There is no room for making up. That's why saving life is more important. Allah says it's okay. Drink and save your life. But the question is, how much am I supposed to drink? Huh? You drink as much as you keep yourself alive. But you do not quench your thirst. I go and drink and drink and drink and I say it's halal. No, it's not halal. You drink as much as you need to survive only. Meaning you take 1 or 2 sips till another opportunity rises where you can get water. But you don't go and drink the whole bottle because it's halal. No, it's not halal. Halal only as much as you need to survive. Now, a guy needs to seek a political asylum in the United States, assuming the United States is haram. Okay? Assuming. It's not haram, we're just assuming. He is seeking asylum in a country where let me give you a vivid example. Iceland enacted a new law that male circumcision has been outlawed. Now, is male circumcision mandatory in our religion? Yes. By me choosing to go to Iceland and live in Iceland, I'm going to compromise my faith. Because if I have a child, then I will not be able to circumcise if he's a male. Now, unless I can travel to England, for example, do the circumcision and come back. But assuming it's completely outlawed, meaning even if I travel to another country, I will be persecuted. So what do I do in this case? Not supposed to go. But let's say I have no choice. I have no choice. I'm a Syrian refugee. No other country on earth gave me the asylum. If I stay where I am in Aleppo, in I don't know where, Idlib, I could be killed. I might be killed. There is a big possibility I get killed. Then in this case, the law of necessity prevails. Meaning, it's okay, go to Iceland, but then try to extend your residency as much as the law of necessity requires. Meaning, you go there, you stay 5, 6, 7 years, but then when the conditions are okay in your original country where you were being persecuted and it is safe to go back, you have to go back. You stay as much as you have to, not more. You don't say, you know what, since I came to Iceland and I enjoyed life here, let me stay forever. You can't do this. You stay as much as you have to, as long as there is danger in the Middle East for you not to be able to go back. But the minute the conditions change and you're capable of going and it's safe for you to go, you go. So if the circumstances for a Muslim to migrate to a non-Muslim country with the knowledge that the migration will cause loss of faith, a person seek political asylum in a non-Muslim country in order to save his life, it is permissible for him to make that journey to the extent that it saves his life and not more than that. Okay, so my dear brothers and sisters, please read this chapter all the way till page 36. I'm going to quiz you next week on this for 2 minutes. On this chapter. Part 2. Yes, part 2. Part 2, please read part 2 entirely, which contains chapter 1 through chapter 3. So read chapter 1 and 2, 3 of part 2. And then next week, we will be talking about part 9. I'm not going to go according to the order of this book. I'm going to go according to the Qazwini order, my own order. So I will jump from part 2 to part 9 next week. So next week we're going to have a quick quiz on part 2 with you, and then we move to chapter 22, part 9, which is page 99. Please read that chapter and be ready for it. Naam? No, it's going to be verbal. The quiz is going to be verbal. Naam. We'll get you the book, inshallah. We'll get you the book. Okay, so what about those who don't have the book? Then they are exempted from the quiz. Naam.
They can save their life.
Yes, they can save their life. But for those who came late, we will have copies for you, inshallah, next week. You can claim them before the class. And please be prompt, be on time. Our class starts at 6 p.m. sharp. And I hope the photographer is hearing me well, inshallah. So next week, we will be starting at 6 sharp. We end by 7 sharp, inshallah. Inshallah, we'll see you next week. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.